episode is the priesthood and the laity. So I'm going to if I should introduce myself, would that just be rude if I didn't? So my name is Gerry, and with that out of the way, let me introduce my panelists. So we are pleased to have Father Scott Bailey of Risen Christ Catholic Parish joining us. Hello, Father.
Hello, Gerry.
And we also have Brett Manero and Martha Griswold, who also are joining us for this. All right. Can you guys hear me okay? Brett?
Yep.
So before we get into the night and the topic, so why don't you guys just tell us a little bit about yourself? Father Scott, tell us something about you.
I've been pastor at Risen Christ now for 2 years, and I grew up in Immaculate Heart of Mary Parish in Northglenn, went to college at CSU in Fort Collins, seminary here in Denver, and I've been a priest now for just over 7 years.
Wow. All right, thank you. Martha, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I grew up down in South Carolina on Hilton Head Island. But after I graduated from college, became a focused missionary. Focus stands for the Fellowship of Catholic University Students. And the primary apostolate of Focus is just to reach out to students on the college campus and help them have an encounter with Christ, and then help them head into life on mission for Christ and his church. And so I have been doing that the past 10 years, lived in Nebraska, Georgia, Miami, Florida, and now I'm out here in Denver and have lived here for 5 whole years, which is kind of crazy for me to be in one place for that long. So it's a huge gift.
Oh, and we're very lucky to have you tonight. And Brett, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Thanks, Gerry. So I'm Brett Manero. I was born and raised in southwestern Connecticut, right outside New York City. I went to college in the UK for 4 years. And then after that, I lived in the Washington, D.C. area for about 6 years, where I worked for a Catholic nonprofit right in the heart of D.C. And then I felt the Lord calling me out to Denver about 5 years ago. So I made the move to the Denver area in the summer of 2015. Where I worked at a large Catholic parish, St. Thomas More Parish, for a few years. And then 2 years ago, I made the move over to Catholic Charities of Denver, where I work in parish relations. So I work with all the churches, the parishes of the Archdiocese of Denver with Catholic Charities. And I also do some part-time work at the Cathedral Basilica in Denver, running the RCIA program there. I just finished a master's in theology at Christendom College a few months ago. And like Gerry, I'm a huge Star Wars fan and proud of it. So thanks, Gerry.
No, thank you. I mean, wow, that's you guys have all impressive resume. I almost want to ask, do you guys moonlight as superheroes at some point as well? Because it's just, where do you guys find the time to do everything? So thank you all for being here tonight. And so we're going to get into it tonight. We're going to start with just some basic questions. And I'm going to start with you, Father Scott. One of the things that a lot of people don't know essentially is what does a Catholic priest do? I mean, people see just, they assume that you just preach, you go to mass, and that's all you do several times a day, and that's it. Just to start off, what exactly does a Catholic priest do? What does that encompass? What is the totality of your job?
That's a really big question. So my job, I suppose, at least in my current role as pastor, is to be the spiritual father for an entire community, which involves lots of different things. At least as pastor, I'm supposed to be ensuring that our ministries are in place and that they're effective. And so I've got to manage volunteers. I have to manage staff people. I have to manage a budget. Make sure that the sacraments happen. So the sacraments that kind of fill my week tend to be Mass. I have usually 2 Masses a day. Unless it's my day off, then I only have 1. Confessions multiple times a week, anointing calls. That's probably those are the most regular ones that I do all the time. Obviously the occasional wedding and baptism and confirmation and that sort of stuff. So I'm kind of like, caring for people and their spiritual needs. I happen to do a lot of one-on-one appointments. That's just something the Lord seems like he's places in my lap in my ministry. So my calendar can be filled throughout the week with a lot of just be it people who come to me already for spiritual direction, or maybe it's a parishioner who's just wanting to kind of talk through some issue in their life or going through some crisis in their life. There's a lot of one-on-one ministry for me.
And that's a lot. And this is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, or is it like on your day off, you're like, well, I can't be a priest on my day off, or is it like, how does that work?
I at least take my collar off on my day off, and I have maybe a quieter day. I'm an introvert naturally, so for me, a day off pretty much means I need time alone to recharge. If I don't get time alone on my day off, then I become, as I like to call myself, Father Grumpy Pants for the next several days, because I just don't feel relaxed. I don't feel like I got the recharge time that I needed. And so whatever, the times come when, even ministry has to be done on my day off. If my parochial vicar's out of town and I get a sick call or I have a funeral to do or something like that, like that's just going to be the nature of it. But it's good for me to have at least 1 day a week. Priests get typically 1 day a week to be away from their normal responsibilities, so long as they're kind of being taken care of by somebody else at the parish for like masses and confessions and that sort of thing.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And Martha, what you said that in working with focus, and the same question to you as I asked for Father Scott, what is the totality of your job as a lay person? What is that for you?
For me personally, Gerry?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I guess I see my role as a layperson is just, we think about the church as, the reality is it's the mystical body of Christ. And so when you think of a body, like there's different parts and there's different roles, and we're all essential to it. And so for me as a member of the church, that means that since I'm not a priest and I'm not a religious, I am a member of the laity. And God's specific invitation to me in that role in the church is to serve, specifically to be reaching out to students on the college campus, to be helping them on their journey of faith. I work in the missions department of Focus, so we help to facilitate encounters with the poor around the world, which COVID has changed pretty significantly, but we can talk about that later. But yeah, it's a huge gift. Like in some capacity, because we're all baptized, we're called to be like missionaries in whatever sphere of influence we have. And so for me, where the Lord has invited me to do that is within my role at Focus as a missionary there.
Okay. And Brett, for you, it's just a simple, what is a laity? So if someone who's watching us and is asking just, what is a laity? Like, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, what the heck am I? A lay person? What do I do? I ask that every morning when I wake up. No. What is a lay person? Well, what I used to tell people at St. Thomas More is if there was this massive nuclear strike on the United States tomorrow, and there was only one Catholic person remaining in America still alive, that person would be the church, really. The church is people. The church, we have wonderful, glorious buildings and cathedrals, but the church really is people. It's souls that make up the church. And so the laity, the lay people, we are the foot soldiers of the church. That's kind of the way I look at it. I was thinking about it today. I was like, maybe the Pope is kind of like the 5-star general, and then maybe the bishops are kind of like the 1-star generals, and then the priests are like the colonels and the captains, and the deacons are the lieutenants, and then the lay people are the bulk of the army, so to speak. Because in a typical army, there's a lot more enlisted people than there are officers. And so we lay people are the bulk of the church. We're the foot soldiers of the church. I think it's one way I would look at it.
Yeah. And so, and now which brings us to the next question. So now that everyone kind of has an idea of, pretty much knows exactly, what a priest does and what the laity is and how it all functions, I think it's, we should go into and talking about just how we're functioning now, right? So recently, in the last, I think this year, maybe the last 2 years or so, we as Catholic have seen our world change. The world changes constantly, but the revelations of things that have been happening inside of the church have come out. There was the report in, I want to say it's Philadelphia.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. So we had that, and then recently we had the Cardinal McCarrick report that was released by the Vatican. I wanted to read it, but it's 461 pages. So yeah, that's a pretty big thing. So my question to you guys is, in light of just everything that's been happening and on that front, how has your life changed because of that? Well, actually, before we even get to that, what has been the biggest difference that you've seen before the revelation and now afterwards? Like, how have your perspectives changed because of what's been happening to the church in this particular area? I'll give it to you, Father Scott.
Yeah, I suppose for me, I entered seminary in 2006, which was just a few years after the priest abuse scandals in Denver kind of broke. So just within a couple of years, I was in college when like the pictures of priests like Father White were on the cover of the newspaper, who was at that point deceased, but he was a huge, our most, I don't know what you want to call it. He was our biggest abuser, I suppose. And so it was an interesting time just to be in application for seminary. There was, I just remember encountering other people at college who would think they're making funny jokes or whatever. They're being critical. They'll say things like, oh, you want to be a priest so you can touch little boys, huh? Oh, yeah. Like I heard that all the time at that time. This was 2005, 2006, as I'm considering entering the seminary. So I got that comment pretty frequently, or whatever, just angry people because they can't believe that someone would ever want to be a priest. And just kind of the perception of the church. So my entire formation in priesthood has been kind of within that context. For me, there was not really a before and an after. It's all been that for me. I think that in the last couple of years, with the Pennsylvania report, quickly followed by a bunch of other states, even Colorado doing their own report, I think it showed the kind of the complicitness even of bishops in the abuse problem of moving priests around, or thinking that because they sent off a priest for some therapy and the therapist said, we think he's probably okay to go back, they just put him back in ministry. We understand now that was a bad idea, but there was too much moving around and too much guilt of even the bishops. So I feel like 15, 20 years ago, we were scandalized by the behavior of the priests. We're almost past the behavior of the priests, and now we're scandalized by the behavior of the bishops. And so I think the McCarrick report kind of plays into that as well. Cardinal McCarrick, famous for his kind of a grooming of and sexual abuse of young men, seminarians and young priests in particular, and how he rose through the ranks of the church and continued to do these things, even with rumors of these things kind of floating around in his lifetime, in his ministry, that it seems that nothing was being done. So I would feel like, it hasn't affected me too much. I feel like here at the parish, we had the biggest, in our report from a year ago, for the state of Colorado, one of the biggest abusers in the state was Father Larry St. Peter, and he was pastor here at this church. So that was a hard thing for my community to hear, that the pastor that they remembered, who they knew that he had some troubles with alcohol and stuff, but they didn't kind of have a bigger sense of his issues. And so that hurt my community. And but I felt so loved and appreciated by the parish at the same time. They were not mad at me. They're mad at the bishops maybe. They're mad at these priests for what they've done. But I felt incredibly loved and supported, especially since I think I gained some credibility with the people. Because, from the pulpit, I cried about this. I was mad about this. And so I think that the people could see that I was kind of with them. I wasn't in any ways trying to back up what priests did or what bishops did.
Yeah, and I was there. I was there that day when I could see how much this hurt you. I was in attendance mass that day. I do go to mass every Sunday, not just that one day, but just saying that. And you know, with that revelation, it's kind of just made me, you know, I'll open this up to you guys as well. It's made me ask what, because there was a difference. These were seminarians going to become priests, and this is what happened to them. And I feel as though, you know, maybe that doesn't get us, I mean, it's still horrible, but it was not as, for me, from what I was looking at, it wasn't wasn't the same as the children. And when all of that was revealed, I almost felt like this was like something within the church, not as right. Like, how did you, Brett and Martha, how did you guys react to that?
Yeah, great question. So I remember when the McCarrick scandal really broke, I think that was about just over 2 years ago. I remember distinctly going for a walk that night in my neighborhood. I think it was a Saturday, actually, and a Catholic friend of mine sent me an article about it. And I remember going for a walk and just feeling really, really discouraged and pretty depressed, actually, because I worked for the church. I worked for a Catholic parish. And, you know, to think the organization I worked for, one of its most prominent leaders in this country the past several decades, turns out he was a pretty horrific human being. Hurt so many people. Who knows how many souls turned away from the church because of his sins, because of his actions. And also McCarrick was Archbishop of Washington, D.C., and I met McCarrick when I was in D.C. There was a Good Friday service where I used to do altar serving for at my parish in D.C., and McCarrick came one year, and he was there. And then for a while, when I was about 23, 24 years old, I was discerning seminary, and I went on a retreat. And who did I sit next to for dinner on that retreat? It was McCarrick. And never would have known, you know? And so it was incredibly shocking. It was depressing. It was just disgusting. It was a combination of all those things. And I'll admit, like, I think at the time I was a bit spiritually lazy. You know, I wasn't going to mass. I was going to Sunday mass, but I wasn't going to mass as often, like on weekdays. Wasn't praying as much. And so I think the combination of that and that news really got me down. And I think I briefly thought, I don't know if I want to work for the church anymore, you know, because when people hear I work for the Catholic Church is getting some really bad press these days. So that was a temptation for a good, you know, maybe week or two. And I remember sitting with my coworkers at the parish, and I said, you know, we need to be prepared because we might have fewer people wanting to become Catholic this year, like in our CIA, or we might have fewer families sending their kids to religious ed at the Catholic Church, but just because of the news. And I've never been more wrong in my life, because that year of our CIA at the parish, at least of the years that I ran it there, was by far and away the best. We had young adults joining. We had married couples who were coming. We had people who just, it almost as if they had never even seen the news about the church. And for me, that was just incredible, because it was a realization, it was a reminder that the church is so much more than the wretchedness of one person. You know, people become Catholic because of the beauty of Catholic truth, the beauty of Catholic teaching, the sacraments, you know, the truth that sets you free, a relationship with Jesus Christ, a relationship with Mary, and the 95% of people in the church who are so great, the 95% of priests and bishops who are great men and holy men, like Father Scott, you know. And so it was incredibly discouraging, and there was a little bit of a temptation for me to walk away from working for the church. But then to see how these beautiful souls wanted to become Catholic, not because of, despite scandal. So just a reminder how the church is a miracle when you think about it. You know, God is constantly working through even the most flawed of people. You look at our history, there's a lot of flawed people, a lot of bad popes in our history, but the gates of hell will never prevail against it, and they never have. And Jesus meant that. And so for me, I mean, it's funny for me, like when people ask me what I do, when I say Catholic Charities, I feel like that gets a lot of respect. It's like, oh, okay, well, you're helping the poor. That's good. We support that. But even before there was a couple of folks I met a couple of years ago, a few years ago, and they said, what do you do? I said, well, I work for a church. Interesting. Like, yeah, the Catholic Church. Interesting. So sometimes you get that kind of weird look, but at the same time, it's like, well, whatever. I work for the Ark of Salvation. So, yeah.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Martha, what about you? When all of this came out, like, how did that impact what you do, especially with Focus and everything? You do a lot of mission work. How did all of these revelation impact you?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I think that the best way to describe what I experienced was, it was like the same part of my heart that, like, as if this had been like a family member almost. It just hurt in the same way. That's all I can describe it as. And I remember reaching out to one of my best friends who's an awesome Catholic priest, and talking to him about this, and just being very like raw and crying, and describing like how like sad and, in a sense, like vulnerable it made me feel. And he had some really great advice and really like pointed me back to Christ. And I think overall the whole experience really challenged me to deeper conversion in the fact that, yeah, I am Catholic because this is Christ's church. And it's filled with a lot of broken people, but like ultimately this is the church that Jesus Christ founded, and I'm Catholic because of him, not because of any individual in it. And then I think as a result of all that happened, one phrase that just stands out to me is, what's not transformed is transmitted. And I think that it was really like, I think that this whole experience has been an invitation to healing for the church as a whole, and just realizing that like when things are kept in darkness, it does nothing but hurt you and everyone around you. And that we need, like, Christ has given us all that we need in his church to like deal with our own stuff, to go through our own healing, and also to help each other on the journey. And I think that this was an invitation to me and to people close to me to begin to live that out in a deeper and more radical way within like our own community. And just realize that like saints are made in groups. No one becomes a saint on their own, and that we need to help each other on the journey and not be afraid to let Jesus shine his light into the darkness of our own hearts, so that we can all continually be transformed and be more of a living image of Christ to the world. It's gotta, like, this was a call to conversion for everyone, I think.
Right. So well said. So, and back to you, Father Scott. So that's what we're dealing with internally, but the church we do exist in the world around this. And for a lot of people, this is, there's anger here. There's anger at what has happened. And there's a feeling that, we hid too many things, we weren't quick enough at correcting it and everything. And it also goes without saying that the Vatican doing a report like this, I don't know a lot about Vatican history, but I don't think they've ever done something like this before. So this is kind of unprecedented, and it is a new standard. So I guess it's a two-part question. The first one is, for people who are seeing this from outside of the church who are angry, how do we talk to them about this? Acknowledging where we stand and the truth of what has happened, but how how do we even engage in that conversation and in just an honest way to just explain where we're coming from? And the second question is, because of what the Vatican did in releasing this report, which is essentially a new standard, it's almost like a self-correcting mechanism that the church is now using, that like they release this thing. Is this something that we should now hold them accountable for, hold ourselves accountable, and expect something like this in the future?
Okay. Yeah, I think if we're encountering someone who's experiencing a lot of anger about this stuff, like, let them see your anger about it too. Let them see your sadness, your disappointment, and then follow it up with the point that Martha just made of, like, I'm not Catholic because of any particular, priest or any person here. And I hate it when I ask people why they're Catholic and their answer is, well, I was raised Catholic. I hate that answer. It drives me crazy. I mean, it's praise God for the gift of your parents that did give you that gift of faith. But if you're in your 20s and your 30s and you're still only Catholic because you were raised Catholic, then there's a little bit of a problem. And so it's, I think, to make that point, like, I'm Catholic because this is the truth and because Jesus has won over my heart. And so when we're confronted with the apparent contradictions or hypocrisy within the church, I think that's the only appropriate answer. But yeah, allow them to see your own anger and your own disappointment and how things have happened and how things have been handled. So that seems to be the most effective. I've been surprised that even at the parish, that just by a couple of homilies where I expressed my own anger, like, man, I gained so many points of credit with people that I've gained trust with a lot of people, because they don't feel like I'm kind of part of the system that's going to kind of shuffle it off to the side like it's no big deal. I'm going to acknowledge, yeah, it's a big deal, and I'm angry about it too. And it's your second part of your question. I don't know what we can expect from the Vatican. I think that many bishops and cardinals around the world were kind of upset that it took this long for the Vatican to come out with a report. We've been asking for a report for 2 years, and so I don't know what accountability looks like. How do we create kind of that accountability? I've spoken with cardinals in the past who kind of see it as their responsibility to try to be that accountability for the Pope and for the Vatican, because they're kind of in this upper level of leadership, and they might have a voice to be able to speak up and call out the Holy Father on some issue that he needs to call him out on, because even the best of priests and popes still need correction sometimes, and still need that little nudge, because we can't have perspective on every issue. So I don't know. I think it's hard to say, yes, this was unprecedented. We've never seen the Vatican do this, but It's hard to say if it's set a standard for what's going to come in the future as well.
Yeah. And the other thing, and just to kind of bring it back towards the end of this thing, is, the church was given to all of us, right? It was given to mankind. It wasn't just made for the priests. It was made for everyone. All of us have a stake in it, in making sure that, it's our church. It was given to us. And so my question to you, Father Scott, is, and this is something that Father Eric said, I think there was this homily after yours, in which I am not quoting him exactly, but he had said something that, as priests, our credibility has been shredded, and it's up to the laity to take over in some ways to start taking. What as the laity help in this sense? How can we help the church against all of this? What can we do to help? Because there's a weird perception from my perspective, that it feels like it's predominantly the priest, but it's our church. We all have a say in there. So what can we do as laity to help the church, and more importantly, help you? Because we're all in this. So what would you give us in terms of marching orders, but in terms of just things for us to ponder?
I think that in general, people have a bad habit of referring to the church, and they really mean the hierarchy of the church. The Catholic Church, and they mean the Pope and the bishops and priests probably, but they don't mean the body of Christ, all of us included. So that's maybe just a little linguistic thing that we have to kind of get in the habit of. If we're going to talk about the hierarchy, then we should refer to them as the hierarchy, the bishops, the priests, the pope, all that, rather than referring to them as if they are the church and we're just everybody else. I don't know. Yeah, I think that I see my role as priest primarily as feeding the flock that in some ways comes to me. Yes, I also have a role of evangelization, but I'm not involved in the world in the way that the laity gets to be involved in the world. No one can be in your workplace except for you. No one can be a part of your family except for you. I can't do that for you. I can't replace your role in your family, your workplace, your neighborhood, your alumni association. I don't know, like you're the only one who is perfectly positioned to influence the lives of all those people. My circle of influence is broad, sure, but it's mostly an influence over the people who are already coming to me. Whereas the laity have this huge, the whole church, but the laity in particular has this huge vocation to evangelize, to bring the faith, to bring the faith to others. And yes, the priesthood, the church, because of the priesthood, has kind of a stained image in the eyes of the world, thanks to the media and thanks to the sins of many clergy. I think the beginning of the healing of that comes from the person who's sitting at your workplace who gets to encounter your joy and your love for the Lord. You're going to begin to change the perception of what they think of the church, and probably even what they think of the priesthood, just by their encounter with you, and they can see your commitment and your fidelity to the Lord. So that'd probably be my short answer to it. I'm sure that Martha and Brett could give a more complete answer to the role of the laity in all of this.
Yeah. Martha, Brett, you guys have the floor.
First, real quick, I promised Mary in Connecticut I'd give her a shout out. So, hey, Mary. And also, I see Alex and DC is here. I know it's 2 hours later on the East Coast, so really appreciate you guys being here. Something I've come to realize, my personal life, my personal faith is, like today. I got up too late today. Today was kind of a crazy, chaotic day, and it's easy to like blame other people and or blame my boss or blame this person or whatever. Like, no, actually, the root cause of a lot of today's stress was the fact that I got up too late, and that's on me. And I think that can apply to our spiritual lives and the church, how the church works. It can be easy to criticize the clergy. I thought Father so-and-so's homily was really boring. Well, guess what? It's not about the homily. It's about the Eucharist, And if I want to improve the church, if I want to build the church, what am I doing for myself? How am I working on myself? How is my own faith? How is my own spiritual life? How is my own personal holiness? So if I want to really bring some healing to the church, best place to start is with myself, not necessarily with the clergy and with other people.
What about you, Martha?
So the phrase that came to mind, kind of building off of what Brett just shared, is you can't give what you don't have. And I think everything that you were sharing, Father, about evangelization is so important. Like, I'm all about it. But I know that as soon as I'm failing to draw from the source, like as soon as I'm like failing to rest in the heart of Christ and to know who I am as daughter of the Father and who I am as like a member of his mystical body, like receiving that truth from him, the more everything like shakes me, because I'm just not rooted. And the less capacity I have to like bring Christ to the world because I'm not receiving him. And so I think that, kind of like I said earlier, like as a whole, this has been a big call to conversion in my own life. I'm just asking, where am I rooted? And how can I help others be rooted in the same way, so that as a whole, as a church, like we're healing together.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for that. And and for anyone and for everybody who's watching, if you have questions as we're going through that, by all means, send them our way. We're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about another current situation in which we're living in is the coronavirus. Now that has altered.
What's that?
Oh, a little thing going around. But it has changed so many things, especially I use my own spiritual life. And I mean, watching mass through my computer, it's been something to get used to. Signing up to go to mass, it's just been this complete, everything's changed. I mean, it's affected every aspect of our lives. And so I wanted to start with you, Brett and Martha, with what are the challenges that the coronavirus has presented to you in trying to do your work as the laity? Like, how has that been a challenge for you guys?
Yeah, I remember when, actually, funny enough, Father Scott, I think the week that public mass was announced that it was going to be canceled for a little while, I actually went to mass at Risen Christ at your parish. And I remember Father Eric talked about, can we be careful with just make sure your hands are clean, because in Rome, they canceled public masses, which is unheard of, right? And that could happen here too in Colorado. I remember thinking, oh, that'll never happen in Colorado. That's ridiculous. It never happened in America. That kind of thing doesn't happen in America, 2 days later, we get the email saying that public mass was canceled, and it was weird. It was hard, and I think that Sunday I remember watching, I think I watched 2 live stream masses, and which was great, but the noticeable difference was that I couldn't receive communion, and that was really hard. It just definitely put in me an even greater appreciation, I hope, for the sacraments, a greater appreciation for our priests too, actually. I think I got a little grumpy. I was like, oh, priests are so lucky, they can just say private mass in the rectories and receive the Eucharist, while the rest of us can't. But I know that wasn't their choice. They didn't want that, and I'm sure they missed us just as much as we missed them. So it definitely made me appreciate the gift that we have, that is the church, the mass, the sacraments, also religious freedom, and that we can go to church, freely and openly. It definitely made me think about the church around the world that isn't so lucky, underground church in China or in the Middle East, where they have to go to mass in secret. So it definitely made me think about that quite a bit. And then, when public mass was resumed, it was just amazing. It was amazing to be able to go again. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
How about you, Martha?
Well, my role currently at Focus is to bring students around the world on mission. So as far as COVID is concerned, I'm not. That's how it's affected my job. That being said, I think that, so we have relationships with our hosts around the world. Some of them are members of religious communities. Some of them are just incredible lay people that are making a really intense difference in their impoverished communities. And we get the privilege of bringing in college students for short periods to help aid whatever mission they're striving to further in their communities. And so I think that as a whole, COVID has actually impacted the church internationally way more catastrophically than it's impacted the church in our country. Which is painful, because anytime a member of the body is suffering, it should affect all of us. So it's been very hard and sad to see that. I do think, though, that one of the good fruits from this is that we are all more aware that life is not forever. And it is a call to conversion about what we're actually here on earth for, and what we're made for, where we're going. And so I have seen that in my own life, in the lives of my friends, and in the lives of the communities that we serve around the world. I think one other fruit of COVID in my own life is, I take the sacraments for granted, kind of like Brett was saying, totally. And I think that it has made me realize how much I how much I like need the sacraments and need Jesus, but also that it is like, it's a gift. It's not something that I'm actually entitled to. It's a gift to be received.
Yeah,
Well,
actually, oh, sorry, Jerry, real quick. I
go ahead.
remember Father Chris at Holy Ghost Church. I think it was maybe during that first shutdown, or maybe after, he talked about how, well, life is full of surprises, right? You know, and how a little virus can change our world so drastically and change our everyday lives so drastically. And maybe in a way that's actually, it's a humbling lesson for us, but it's also a good lesson for us, because in the 21st, especially 21st century America, you know, we're so blessed. We have freedom. There's been a lot of prosperity. People are living longer. You know, we have great access to healthcare, all these things, and then one virus can change all that. And so it's a reminder to us that, yeah, like, our earthly lives are not forever. We are not God, and throughout so much of human history, people have lived like that. You know, there's been pandemics and plagues and stuff like that, and we've been relatively free from that for a long time. And so I think it was definitely a humbling lesson for all of us that, yeah, at the end of the day, we're human, we're not God, and we rely on Him.
So, Father Scott, what do you see with the virus and everything? Like, what do you see from where your perspective is? How's that impacted you, and how have you seen it impact just our, just the parishioners and everyone else? How's that impacted you personally, though?
Yeah, it was, as even Brett kind of hinted at, it actually was hard for the priests, especially in the beginning and the shutdown. You know, we're ordained for the church. We're not ordained for ourselves. I celebrate Mass by myself on my day off, but I was not made to celebrate Mass for myself. My vocation is to celebrate the sacraments in order to feed the flock. I'm supposed to preach. Like, it was really, really weird for weeks on end to have private masses. And, you know, it's weird saying the Lord be with you to the wall and hoping that the angels are just responding. You know, it's not, it was a good reminder that, that I'm not made to be alone as in my vocation. Like, I share in Jesus's role as bridegroom of the church, and the church is my bride, and I live for her, and I'm supposed to pour my life out for the church. And so it was challenging for all of us priests. We missed doing ministry in person. Now, whatever, it was only 6 weeks. In the scheme of history, I suppose, and hopefully the scheme of my priesthood, that's a very tiny little window of time.
Yeah.
At the same time, it opened up some really great opportunities. I mean, we had to, I am not even on social media. Like, I gave up Facebook years ago, and I've been happily off of social media now for like 5 or 6 years. It's been glorious. And but this has kind of forced us priests kind of to figure out the digital communication, and it's a good reminder too. Like, you know, how many hours there are in a week? 160 some odd hours in a week, and we put so much effort into that 1 hour on Sundays. What are we doing the rest of the week for real evangelization and reaching people? Are we doing an effective job of reaching people? So in our parishes, we had to get creative with how do we reach people. I mean, we had a team of staff members calling up every parishioner that we had in our list, which is a couple thousand people we were calling up just to kind of say hello, see how you're doing. Do you need anything? And it was beautiful. For some people, that was so incredibly meaningful to have someone reaching out to them, especially our older parishioners, who some of them still haven't come out of their homes. So it was interesting. And I think it's also created for me an appreciation for the role of the priesthood itself, that if I were to come down with the virus and I can't be doing ministry, that affects an entire community. It's just, I've watched some of my brother priests who've had COVID-19, and they've had to be in quarantine for 2 weeks. So masses are completely canceled and no confessions. And then they're having to worry about every appointment that they've had, every confession that they've heard, or whatever. And how do you tell people? And there's so many people that a priest comes in contact with. Right. And we had a priest in our diocese, a retired priest, who died from COVID. And that's but he wasn't at a parish. But can you imagine just the tragedy of an active priest coming down with it? It was tragic for a retired priest to come down. He spent months in the hospital. He really fought. It's tragic, and to think of just the ministry that a priest is supposed to serve in nourishing the faithful, and you lose a priest, even if you lose him temporarily, it affects a lot of people. And so it gave me just a deeper appreciation of what I'm called to do. I've really enjoyed kind of getting involved in the digital stuff. We now have a parish YouTube channel, and Father Eric and I are making videos every week, and it's a blast. I now know how to edit videos and make thumbnails for YouTube. It's fun. Stuff that I couldn't have cared about 7 months ago, and now I'm doing it pretty regularly. So it's been fun kind of learning new means of evangelization and reaching the people.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I've seen a lot of the videos on YouTube. It's actually pretty cool. So yeah, we do have some questions that came through. I'm going to start with Brett and Martha. Do you think Proposition 15 would do better than? Wait, I'm sorry. Did you think Proposition 15 would do better than it did? Why isn't public opinion on abortion more evenly split? That's for you, Brett and Martha.
I'll let you kick it
Oh,
off.
great. Thanks, Martha. Well, we worked on that quite a bit at Catholic Charities. And so for months, we promoted it. We brought thousands of signs around northern Colorado, and we encouraged people to vote yes on Prop 115. Obviously, that had it passed, it would have outlawed late-term abortion in Colorado. So the next day the day after the election was pretty hard because not only did it not pass, but I think last I checked, it was about 58% of voters voted against it. So I think first part of the question was, I was really surprised that 58% voted no on it. I had a feeling, I figured it probably wouldn't pass, but I thought it was going to be more like 52-48, 51-49, something like that. I thought it was going to be really, really close. So it was definitely hard to get that news that significant majority voted against it. I thought a lot about it, and I don't have all the full answers why. I guess the only real answer I have is JP2 called it the culture of death. That's become so ingrained in our culture, tragically. I think that's a big reason why if it didn't work. Also, there were some pro-lifers who weren't happy with it because they thought, well, you need to outlaw all of abortion, which I get that. So the reason why maybe it didn't work out. But I think just the culture of death having such a stronghold in our culture is the main reason why that it didn't work out. So,
Martha, what do you think?
So can you repeat the question one more time, Gerry?
Yeah, I can. It says, did you think Proposition 115 would have done better than it did, and why isn't public opinion on abortion more evenly split?
Yeah. Well, I have to say, when I first moved out here, physician-assisted suicide was on the ballot, and that passed. So personally, I was very disappointed that it didn't pass, that late-term abortion is allowed in Colorado. That's terrible. But I wasn't necessarily surprised, given by like Brett was saying, the culture of death that's clearly very present in the state as a whole. And I think that, yeah, it makes me ask myself, like, yeah, who am I failing to engage in conversation about this? Because that's utterly depressing that our state wants this. And so, yeah, what in my day-to-day life, what do I need to change about the way I live so that the culture of death is less present? What am I doing to lift that? I guess is where it left me at.
Okay. And Father Scott, did you want to add anything to that as well?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure there's much really to add to that. I guess I am just feeling at the end of it. I mean, we spent, as the Archdiocese, all of us priests spent 2 weekends preaching about life and Proposition 115. And yeah, and I was also discouraged by those final numbers on the vote. And but there are similar numbers to what we saw with the physician assisted suicide a few years ago. So part of me wasn't too surprised. I was hoping for something a little closer. But for me, it maybe highlights that the culture kind of sees this pro-life voice, this Christian voice, is rather irrelevant right now. And it takes a lot of work in our one-on-one work with people to win over hearts, because obviously preaching from the pulpit to our own it isn't enough. And it really requires kind of a conversion of hearts by that one-on-one encounter.
Okay. And so I have a question for you, Father Scott. This is from our Facebook page. And if you guys want to send us any questions, go to Facebook and we'll grab them there if we can. Father Scott, is there a homily you'd like to give but can't?
That I would like to give, but I can't?
Yeah, but you can't. You know, I would say for me, if I was a priest and I was getting up there, I would have a homily on the Lord of the Rings every single Sunday. That's what I would do, but you know, or Star Wars. But is there one that you've always wanted to just give, but you're like you can for one reason or another?
I mean, I've referenced Lord of the Rings maybe 3 times in homilies in the last 7 or 8 years. But it's not a homily about Lord of the Rings. You have to loop in the Lord of the Rings and make it about Jesus. Yeah, I don't feel like there's anything that I can't preach about, or that that would be, I don't know. But I realize that I'm going to irritate people no matter what I talk about sometimes, especially if I get into any issue that politics is at all interested in. So like, you know, we preached on Proposition 115, and I had angry people contacting me about what we had to say about 115. But a year ago, I'm preaching about immigration, and we got other angry people reaching out to us and angry that we're preaching about immigration. And so when we're Catholic, our beliefs don't fit neatly within any political party, other than maybe the American Solidarity Party, which was based on Catholic social teaching. But but the major parties, they don't fit our neatly with our Catholic faith. And so, yeah, I'm going to preach the truth no matter what it is. And if it's offensive to some people, then I hope that people will talk to me one-on-one rather than just walk out of the church, though that's happened.
Yeah. We've got another one, and I think this one is for Father. What is the church's plan to properly catechize? Yes, the Catholics who are poorly catechized and believe in abortion and unbiblical things.
What's the church's plan? I wish that we had a nice, easy church's plan for evangelizing the poorly catechized on any issue. It's hard. Part of it is it has to come out in homilies. Like we have to find ways of looping this in the homilies, I think, because I can offer a night all about abortion, and I'll get the 5 people who are in the pro-life committee showing up, and probably everybody else saying, "Man, I already know that topic," or the people who don't agree with it are just not going to show up. It's hard to create kind of like an atmosphere where people can openly come and just listen and ask their questions and stuff. So yeah, I think the priest has to be preaching it from the pulpit. And if I'm not preaching every issue, then shame on me. Those things need to find their way into my homilies. But I think, you know, just kind of going back to the other stuff we've been talking about with the Laity, like it has to do with the influence of the ordinary person in their ordinary workplaces living out their faith publicly. That's going to be far more effective than the guy in the Roman collar who already barely has the trust of anyone who's not Christian or anyone who's kind of on the fence about the faith or kind of fallen away on the fence Catholics. They're going to be far more influenced by their neighbor, their loved one who loves them and can witness to them than they are by that priest that they don't really know. I see Martha and Brett nodding their heads. Thank you for agreeing. Anything, would you add to that?
Amen and hallelujah.
Yeah.
Honestly, Gerry, when you read that question, like my initial reaction was the church's plan is you. The church's plan is me. Like we're called to be formed, and we have everything that we need to be formed in our faith. And when we have questions, like it's it's our duty and responsibility to like seek and find answers, and then to like share it in love with those who we do love, coming from a place where they know that we are sharing it because we desire their good, not because we're like high and mighty or anything like that, you know?
Yeah, I think the way we should strive to catechize and live our faith is always, it's the cross, right? The cross is that perfect combination. Well, it's heaven meets earth, right? And it's also that perfect balance of justice and mercy. You know, the cross is perfect justice and perfect mercy at the same time. And it's always a difficult balance, but we try our best and we let God fill in the gaps. You know, when we encounter someone maybe who's very angry with the church or doesn't understand church teaching, or let's say we befriend someone who has not at all lived any kind of Christian lifestyle, you know, you encounter them with that combination of mercy and truth. You know, let's say a woman were to come to us and say like, you know, I've had 2 abortions and but I'm interested in being Catholic, but am I loved? It's that balance of you are loved, absolutely, and you can receive mercy and start anew. Yes, we condemn the culture of death, absolutely, unequivocally, but we also are all about mercy at the same time. You know, I think sometimes people think of the church, especially the Catholic Church, as just this kind of big waving finger saying, no, you can't do that. You can't have any fun, you know, thou shalt not. But I think when you think of it more as, you know, the church is all about life and living life to the fullest. You know, I think if we can show people that in our personal lives, our personal friendships, that's the best way to start to catechize.
Right. Well said. So we have 2 more questions. So I'll go with, well, the first question is for Father Scott. The second question is for both of you. So Father Scott, this one is from Brad. He wants to know thoughts on poor Mass attendance by Catholics in regular time and belief in the real presence of the Eucharist. How do we turn the tide?
You know, several years ago, the Archbishop instituted the Restored Order of the Sacraments in the Archdiocese. So, I mean, I was confirmed as a teenager years after I received my first communion. And so the Archbishop has put it back in the order that it was, you know, until like 1918 or something like that, where we now confirm and then give Holy Communion. And I remember when that was happening, there was a lot of concern around, well, what's going to happen with youth ministries? People aren't going to come to youth group anymore if there's no like confirmation at the end of that. And I remember just having this conversation maybe with different youth ministers and stuff, and talking this out and realizing, well, we need to make youth ministry something that people want to come to. We need to do it the best that we can do, like make it worth their time rather than just holding over kind of their heads. If you go to youth group, you can get confirmed at the end of the year, rather than kind of having that carrot on the stick. Like, let's make the whole thing the carrot. Let's make the whole thing really the best thing we can do and engaging. And I think there's something similar going on with Mass. The reasons people don't want to go to Mass, they didn't connect with Father's homily, or they don't like the music, or whatever reason. It's almost always these superficial reasons.
Right.
I guess one thing no parish is going to do everything perfectly, but I find that I'm doing what I can to try to influence, like make things the best that we can. Like Father Eric and I work so freaking hard on our homilies. Father Eric teaches preaching at the seminary. It better be good. I think it makes a difference when it's clear that Father is really praying the Mass, and the people who are in the pews are really praying the Mass. Like, this is actually meaningful to them. I think when we see the witness of the people around us, for even the C&E, Christmas and Easter Catholic, who's going to sit in the pews every now and then, just noticing the fidelity of the people around them. I love it when God gives me the gift of tears at Mass. It happens like maybe twice a year, where something it's usually on a weekend where I don't have to preach because I pray better at Mass. It's usually Deacon Preach weekend. Deacon gave a homily, maybe something in the homily touched me, and somehow while I'm celebrating the Eucharist, it just hits me. And I realize that my prayer in that moment affects people in a really positive way. And so I think that if priests are really praying and priests are really preparing for the liturgy well, and if the people in the pews are also preparing their hearts and really engaged in liturgy well, that witness will be really helpful for the people who only come on occasion.
Okay.
And I think it also helps with helping people believe in the real presence of the Eucharist. If the people who already believe it are talking about it and they're showing their devotion, their love for it, it's going to start to touch people's lives. That's not the full solution, but that's kind of on the surface, that's the first thing I see.
Yeah. And then our last question, and this is for both of you, Brett, Martha, and Father, is do you think the church right now, are we preaching, evangelizing from a position of courage or fear in the current world right now? Are we preaching, are we going out there, are we from a position of fear or strength or courage?
I'll let the focus missionary answer that first.
Gerry, I don't evangelize because I'm afraid. I evangelize because I'm excited. Like, I believe that this is true and I care about people. And like, because of that, like, I want them to know the truth. I hope that's where people are coming from when they go out and share their faith. Because if they're not, like, yeah, I think that's a deeper rooted issue, like in your own heart, and in how you see God. But I'm sure Father has some really good things to say.
Right, you can go if you'd like.
Oh, because I have nothing good to say. Yeah.
No, I'm
Well, okay. Is it either courage or fear? I mean, I think it can be both. I mean, when I see organizations like Focus, Christ in the City, in Denver, when I see the Sisters of Life, or priests like Father Scott, Father Eric, and our Archbishop Aquila, I think they're preaching from courage,
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, let me put it this way. If St. Paul were to come in and look at everything, what would he say? Are we as outgoing as St. Paul is, or are we more reserved in our convictions to go out? Is a better way perhaps of phrasing it.
Just imagine this, like the letter of Paul to the Coloradans or something. He'd be like chewing us out. No, he probably, this is my initial reaction, he probably would have a lot to say. He'd probably be like, okay, you're doing a lot of great things, but why not this? Why not this? I mean, he was a very fiery individual, it seems. I think he probably would have a lot to say, like, do this, do that, do better. What do you think, Martha? Or Father?
Yeah, well, I guess one more thing to add. When you put it from that perspective, like, I do think that a lot of people don't evangelize out of fear, whether it's fear of rejection or fear of being judged or whatever. And like, what came to mind is like perfect love casts out fear. And so, yeah, I think, again, like, we need to go back from the source and be receiving from the source. And that's going to be like, if we're not receiving our conviction to share our faith from the Lord, then yeah, we're going to be afraid and we're not going to do it. And so it's easy to talk about like the church as a whole and talk about like big issues and whatever, but things like this really do come back to us as individuals. Like, I can't change the whole church, but I can change myself, and I can like bring people around me that I know want to be better, so that we can journey towards the Lord together and call each other higher. And I think when it comes to evangelization, like, that's the answer. But Father or Brett might have good things to share more on that point.
Father Scott, what say you?
Kind of this piggybacks a little bit on what Brett was saying of what would St. Paul say to churches. Right now at Daily Mass, we're reading through the beginning part of Revelation, and here the Lord, through John, is giving a message to the different churches at the time, maybe different dioceses or different towns. And, there's every time the Lord, almost every time I think, the Lord has something positive to say about what this community is doing well. And then it's usually followed up with some criticism what they need to be doing. And my reflection at Mass this morning was his words to the church in Sardis. He says, "You have a reputation for being alive, but you are dead." And it made me think about Denver, because for 20 years, I think that Denver has had this reputation of being a church that is alive. I keep meeting all these people who've moved to Colorado because there's just this reputation that we've got good things going on here in the church. We got a great adult community. We have a great bishop. We have a good seminary. We got good priests, whatever. There's this reputation that the church is alive here. And that can be our perception of things. And maybe there's a lot of truth in that. But if the Lord was being strict with us, if we were getting a performance review, which I get to be doing with all my staff this week, if we were getting a performance review on how we're doing, would the Lord say that we have a reputation for being alive, but in reality we're dead? We look at not that the numbers are everything, but we know that the number of people joining RCIA in general is going down. The number of people baptized, the number of people getting married, all the numbers are going down. The commitment of people's hearts in the pews. Maybe the people who are here now in the midst of the pandemic, we can see who really longs to be here, who's making the sacrifices that come in the midst of this pandemic. But I think on the whole, culturally, we have a lot of work to do, and evangelization has to come from a place of love. When we're in love with somebody, we just want to talk about the one that we're in love with. It's almost like you get a little annoying about it, maybe just talking about this great guy I just started dating, whatever it was. Like, there can be this excitement, this enthusiasm for the one that I love. And it has to be the same for us when we talk about the Lord. There's this, it's not coming from a place of obligation. I'm supposed to do this, but it's flowing as this wellspring of my encounter with God. I want other people to know this one that I love.
Right. All right. Well said. Which brings us to the end of our first episode, which this was amazing. At some point, I'll explain how this all came to be, but so this was really great. But I don't want to end without a call to action. And a call of action is to both of you, to Father Scott, to Martha, and to Brett. And so what we'll do is we'll post a couple of places, like if you want to volunteer or do anything like that, if you want to be engaged, not so much because you're engaged in the church, but because you do want to make a change, just starting with yourself, but the world around you. And because one of the things that came out in the midst of all this is it starts with us. It starts with us and just what we can do with what we have, with the little that we have. So we'll post that there on the Facebook page. But I'm going to end it by opening it up to you guys, in your profession and what you do, with so much fear and so many things going on. Mm-hmm. What is your call to action? For Father Scott, if there's a young man who goes, why, I want to be a priest, but is this something? Is this something I can do? Or does it matter anymore? What validity is, what value is there in being a priest? For Brett and Martha, with everything that you do, it's kind of different being a laity and volunteering, because it's different than a regular job. What you guys do at the end of the day, you don't go home and have, money or anything. You go home with the hope that what you did made a difference, and that's all you can take home with you. And these are incredibly challenging things for people to partake in. So I leave it up to you guys. If you were going to give a call to action in the face of all that, what would you say? The floor is open to all who wish to enter, apparently at your own risk.
Well, Catholic Charities, we always need help. We couldn't do what we do without volunteers, without the people who staff our shelters, who donate food, baby supplies to us. 95% of what we do is made possible by volunteers, by donors. we're always in need of help. We really are, especially during this weird time of COVID when more people are staying home. Um, and the Lord wants us to reach out to the poorest of the poor. We serve the homeless, we serve the unborn, we serve women who are in crisis pregnancies. Um, there's so many different avenues to serve there, so we always need help there. And then with RCIA, think about like sponsoring someone. If you know someone who's thinking about becoming Catholic, talk to them about being Catholic, why you're Catholic, and think about potentially being a sponsor for them and bringing them into the church. Yeah, those would be my two action items.
Martha?
Well, Brett hit on serving the poor, which is usually my rally cry. So, but I think I have two thoughts. First of all, commit to prayer. If you don't know your Savior, then yeah, you're lost. Commit yourself to growing in your relationship with the Lord, and really striving to encounter Him and see Him and know Him in a deeper way through prayer and through encountering Him in the sacraments. The second thing that I would say is find 3 or 4 people in your life that are striving after the same things when it comes to faith and when it comes to service, and hold each other accountable. I think especially during COVID, everyone is feeling intensely isolated, and that is a terrible place to be, as a church and as an individual. And so I think finding 3 to 4 people, even if you keep each other accountable in a socially distanced fashion, just make sure that you're doing it. Make sure you're finding people that want to grow in relationship with the Lord, that want to be challenged, to go outside their comfort zone in serving both the physically and the spiritually poor, and help each other on the journey.
Yeah, and I suppose I would add to that one takeaway that I feel like has come up a few times in the course of this whole thing has been the invitation to just share your faith with the people around you. That's the most effective, most important thing that maybe all of us can be doing right now. And yeah, just like the parishes have had to figure out how to do that not in person, there's so many ways that we can be sharing our faith. And it could be kind of like a low impact. It doesn't have to be too difficult to share. It could just be like, I really like this homily by my parish priest. And just to click and share with somebody else, be it maybe just on your Facebook wall or something, but even to share it with someone in particular and say, hey, I thought that this video or this thing really struck me, and I thought you might have really appreciate this. That can be just a simple little beginning to a conversation with somebody else. And I've seen people who've had great conversions just because someone gently started the conversation like that by just sharing something that they thought was impactful in a just like you might recommend a movie to somebody. I really liked the movie Up. You might enjoy the movie Up. You can do the same thing. I really enjoyed this thing. I thought you might enjoy this. It'd be really a great way of sharing your faith in a simple way, even with people that you're not close to physically, if you can't be in the same workplace.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Well said. And yeah, and that's going to do it for this our first episode of Catholic Taboos. I'd like to thank everyone who joined in. It means a lot for all the questions and the interest that everyone's thinking in this. So I'm really thankful for that. But more importantly, I want to thank our guest, Father Scott. Thank you so much for joining us. And
thank you.
I haven't forgotten about the artistic rivalry. Fun fact, Father Scott is a really good artist. I mean, I think I saw that. I was at the parish festival and I think you drew Pope John Paul II in a train reading. And I remember looking at that going, well, I got a rival. Well, that's kind of how it works. So yeah, no, so thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. And I also want to thank Martha and Brett for joining us as well. And I know how hard I know how difficult and challenging the work that you guys do, especially in the midst of everything else. So in signing off, I would say to everyone who watched, like Father Scott said, one thing you can take away from all this is in the midst of everything that's happening, don't be afraid to share your faith, share who you are. It goes a long way, and it may not seem like much, but it is something. So, and yeah, until next time, my name is Gerry, and yeah, thank you for all coming, and I'll see you guys later.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Gerry. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yep, thank you. Bye.